All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another Bible study, Trinity Burning Bible study, where we are in 2 Samuel. We're going to be in chapter 19 today, which will be really exciting, following up what happened in the last chapter. There'll be a lot to unpack here as well, a lot going on. But before we get started, I always love to do just a little bit of a miniature review here, just to get our heads back into what's going on as we lead into this chapter, because the chapters, again, always make more sense when you jump into them in this kind of preceding pattern here. So, if you remember in 2 Samuel 17, Absalom received counsel from Ahithophel, who was a wise counselor, who said that he should lead 12,000 men and take care of David for Absalom, which was probably the wise plan. We believe it would have worked. But remember, God allowed Hushai to go there. That was David's double agent. Gave him bad advice, said, hey, how about you hold off and wait a little bit? You need all your people from Dan to Beersheba, which means north to south, right? And said, you need to take time to recruit people, which is obviously buying David time. This was also, remember, an answer to David's prayer. Remember, David prayed that Ahithophel's counsel would be foiled and be terrible and that things would go wrong. And God did answer him here, because we know that Absalom listened to Hushai. One of the most important reasons he did is because, remember, he kind of buttered up Absalom and said, hey, you should be the one leading. You're all great and powerful. You're our great leader, Absalom. And does that thing where you can stroke people's egos and butter them up. And Absalom's proof of that. Then you had Jonathan and Ahimaaz. Remember, they were the sons of Zadok and Abiathar, the priests. They were also the spies for David, and we see that biblical pattern again, just like we saw in Joshua, in the story of Rahab, when she had to hide the spies. Same thing here. Jonathan and Ahimaaz got spotted. They were supposed to be discreet. They got spotted, and they hid inside a well, covered it up. The men didn't know where they were at, and then they were able to be rescued out and deliver that message, showing that God had provisions there over them and made sure that everything was good. And then to end it, we saw that Shobi, Machir, and Barzillai brought David more provisions. We had Ziba earlier in the chapter before this, and then they bring more food. Remember how important that was, because how would you like to be out in the wilderness? How would you like to leave home without any refrigerator or any snacks that you got to take? No water or anything like that, and you're out there with a bunch of people, and you're hungry and thirsty. So what a blessing God sent these people here, these three men with provisions to make sure they're taken care of, and it shows us again how God is always taking care of us. That's why he always, Jesus even says that, don't worry, the flowers get dressed, the birds feed, and they don't store anything up. They don't have refrigerators and snack cubbies or anything like that. So it shows that God is providing for David and his men. He's overseeing everything. And then last week in chapter 18, we saw David's army was organized for battle against Absalom and his men. He put his three men, he split up his army in three basically departments here. He was showing good organization, good leadership, good administration. He's a professional at war, right? So David knows how to fight. You just can't go out there and say, hey, let's go battle. You have to have a plan. You have to have strategy. So he had those three men lead his units there. And then, of course, we saw the prophecy of David fulfilled, which many people miss in that whole parable story where he said that son, which was actually referring to Absalom, not one of his hairs should touch the ground. That's exactly how Absalom dies. Remember, they're battling in the forest of Ephraim, which that's usually judgment and danger, and that's why the battle had to happen there. God's in control over nature. Remember, if they would have been battling in the plains, this wouldn't have been able to happen the way it did, but God had it so that Absalom got stuck by his hair, the mule ran away, which that was a royal animal. It shows that his royalty is leaving him as well, and he's stuck in the tree hanging, remember, between heaven and earth, meaning he's been rejected by God in heaven, he's been rejected by men on earth. Both literally he's hanging between heaven and earth, but you can look at it in a spiritual sense that way as well. He's been rejected by both heaven and earth, and he's hanging there in the balance, stuck. And remember that one servant found him and went and told Joab that, hey, I saw Absalom, and Joab flips out and says, why didn't you kill him? He said, well, didn't David say not to harm him if we got him? And Joab is so vindictive that he ended up killing him, of course, 3 javelins, and then he had 10 other men join in, so, Joab could have easily said, hey, I don't know which one of us killed him. There's a lot of people involved. This wasn't me, David. Joab is being politically clever here. And then, of course, he had the messengers went. David thought it was going to be good news. And it should have been good news, except there was some bad news that came with it. If you remember, the Cushite, the man that we believe from Ethiopia, delivered the hard truth that Absalom was dead. And David basically goes into shock. The Hebrew shows that he was trembling or shaking. And he says, Absalom, my son, about 5 different times there, showing he's completely devastated. It was what he had stayed up around the gates. He feared the message that was coming, and it indeed did come. And David was here mourning. And that is where we pick up in chapter 19. That's a really important scene here, as we're going to see as chapter 19 opens up. All right, 2 Samuel 19. We'll start going verse by verse. It was told Joab, "Behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom." So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people. For the people heard that day, "The king is grieving for his son." And the people stole into the city that day as people steal in, who are ashamed when they flee in battle. The king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, "Oh, my son Absalom, oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, "You have today covered with shame the faces of all your servants, who have this day saved your life, and the lives of your sons and your daughters, and the lives of your wives and your concubines, because you love those who hate you, and hate those who love you. For you have made it clear today that commanders and servants are nothing to you. For today I know that if Absalom were alive and all of us were dead today, then you would be pleased. Now therefore arise, go out and speak kindly to your servants. For I swear by the Lord, if you do not go, not a man will stay with you this night. And this will be worse for you than all the evil that has come upon you from your youth until now." Then the king arose and took his seat in the gate. And the people were all told, "Behold, the king is sitting in the gate." And all the people came before the king. Now Israel had fled every man to his own home. And all the people were arguing throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "The king delivered us from the hand of our enemies, and saved us from the hand of the Philistines, and now has fled out of the land from Absalom. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, is dead in battle. Now therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing the king back?" And King David sent this message to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. "Say to the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his house, when the word of all Israel has come to the king? You are my brothers. You are my bone and my flesh. Why then should you be the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my bone and my flesh? God, do so to me and more also, if you are not commander of my army from now on in place of Joab." And he swayed the heart of all the men of Judah as one man, so that they sent word to the king, "Return, both you and all your servants." So the king came back to the Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to meet the king and to bring the king over the Jordan. And Shimei the son of Gera, the Benjaminite from Baharim, hurried to come down with the men of Judah to meet King David. And with them were 1,000 men from Benjamin. And Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, with his 15 sons and his 20 servants, rushed down to the Jordan before the king. And they crossed the ford to bring over the king's household and to do his pleasure. And Shimei the son of Gera fell down before the king as he was about to cross the Jordan, and said to the king, "Let not my lord hold me guilty, or remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. Do not let the king take it to heart, for your servant knows that I have sinned. Therefore, behold, I have come this day, the first of all the house of Joseph, to come down to meet my lord the king." Abishai the son of Zeruiah answered, "Shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed?" But David said, "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should do this day be as an adversary to me? Shall anyone be put to death in Israel this day? For do I not know that I am this day the king over Israel?" And the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king gave him his oath. And Mephibosheth the son of Saul came down to meet the king. He had neither taken care of his feet, nor trimmed his beard, nor washed his clothes, from the day the king departed until the day he came back in safety. And when he came to Jerusalem to meet the king said to him, "Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth?" He answered, "My lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said to him, I will saddle a donkey for myself, that I may ride on it and go with the king. For your servant is lame. He has slandered your servant to my lord the king. But my lord the king is like the angel of God. Do therefore what seems good to you. For all my father's house were but men doomed to death before my lord the king. But you set your servant among those who eat at your table. What further right have I then to cry to the king?" And the king said to him, "Why speak any more of your affairs? I have decided. You and Ziba shall divide the land." And Mephibosheth said to the king, "Oh, let him take it all, since my lord the king has come safely home." Now Barzillai the Gileadite had come down from Rogelim, and he went on with the king to the Jordan, to escort him over the Jordan. Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old. He had provided the king with food while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very wealthy man. And the king said to Barzillai, "Come over with me, and I will provide for you with me in Jerusalem." But Barzillai said to the king, How many years have I still to live that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am this day 80 years old. Can I discern what is pleasant and what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats or what he drinks? Can I still listen to the voice of singing men and singing women? Why then should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go a little way over the Jordan with the king. Why should the king repay me with such a reward? Please, let your servant return, that I may die in my own city, near the grave of my father and my mother. But here's your servant, Kimham. Let him go over with my lord the king, and do for him whatever seems good to you. And the king answered, Kimham shall go over with me, and I will do for him whatever seems good to you. And all that you desire of me, I will do for you. Then all the people went over the Jordan, and the king went over. And the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own home. The king went on to Gilgal, and Kimham went on with him. All the people of Judah, and also half the people of Israel, brought the king on his way. Then all the men of Israel came to the king and said to the king, Why have our brothers, the men of Judah, stolen you away, and brought the king and his household over the Jordan, and all David's men with him? All the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, Because the king is our close relative. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have we eaten at all at the king's expense, or has he given us any gift? And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah, Well, we have 10 shares in the king, and in David also we have more than you. Why then did you despise us? Were we not the first to speak of bringing back our king? But the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. And that's how the chapter ends. There's, again, a lot going on here, so we'll unpack what's all taking place here and the meaning of all of it. Let's start with the first 8 verses here, where Joab rebukes David. So verse 1 says, It was told Joab, Behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom. So, word of David's grief and its intensity spreads quickly throughout the kingdom, right? And his mourning isn't private. Remember last time in the chapter, it says he went up in a chamber. He basically went into a bedroom and cried to himself, my son Absalom, my son, my son. Now it's become visible and emotional, and it's out on display, right? So the people are watching their king break down, basically. And not only that, but over the enemy, they just risked their lives to defeat. It wasn't exciting going into the forest of Ephraim and battling, right, with these men. So they're seeing David mourn over his son, and now it's public. It's not private anymore. The whole nation's starting to find out. Verses 2 and 3. So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people, for the people heard that day the king is grieving for his son. And the people stole into the city that day as people steal in who are ashamed when they flee in battle. So of course the soldiers won the battle, but their success is overshadowed by David's pain that they see here, which it shows how a leader's emotions, should be kept in check, especially in public at least, and how it could damage morale, right? So the people felt guilty for winning instead of gratitude. You'd think you went out and won this battle. Absalom was ready to kill. It's reminiscent again of when Saul died. David was upset about Saul, but not like he is with Absalom. But you go out and you fight, thinking you're defending the king, you're defending the nation, and you're taking out Absalom, all to feel guilty for it. You'd think you'd say, hey, thank you guys for saving my life. You guys did a great job winning that battle, but you don't hear anything like that from David. He's just upset about his son dying. So they start to feel guilty. So instead of celebration, which you usually have after a battle, there's silence and shame. It says they, as people steal in who are ashamed when they flee in battle, they kind of have their tails be tucked between their legs, kind of ashamed they even were out there in the battle. So things are very reversed, right, than they should be. So this, again, it shows how David's reaction reversed the mood of the nation. What should have been a happy day is really a sad day. And their boldness in battle, it should have been praised, is now an embarrassment when they brought peace. So it's really confusing for the men, and Joab knows it. So verse 4 says, The king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, O my son Absalom, O Absalom, my son, my son. And again, this is the same kind of thing we heard to end the last chapter. So he's still probably in a state of shock. It's not easy to just turn off your emotions that your son was just killed. Not only that, he was the next one in line to be the king, right? And Amnon, he already had a son, Amnon, who was supposed to be the king next, that he died. And now Absalom died. And David's in shambles. And I know deep down he knows it's his own fault for what he did, with Uriah and Bathsheba. So he knows he's paying the penalty for this. But it also shows that you can see a sincere love for Absalom. Even though he was at war with him, he didn't ever really hold it against Absalom so much, as he still always loved him, right? A father still loves their son no matter what. You can kind of see that here. But again, we're seeing that there's an important balance you need in leadership, right? You need to know when you can be emotional, but when you need to yield to your responsibilities, right? You can't be out here weeping and crying for the man they just killed, and it throws everybody off, right? People need hopeful leadership, and this is not very hopeful. They just want a battle, and they're all kind of confused now. So Joab jumps in to rebuke the king here, verse 5. Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, "You have today covered with shame the faces of all your servants, who have this day saved your life, and the lives of your sons, and your daughters, and the lives of your wives and your concubines." So Joab, he doesn't even hesitate. I love, he walks in and he's furious. Now remember, him and his brother Abishai are they're kind of fiery guys, right? They want to kill, they want to fight, they're aggressive, and Joab's sick of it. He was just out in battle. He just killed Absalom, who was after, how many murders has Joab committed? I don't even know now. It's up there. I'd have to look at it. But he's killed him, and he comes back thinking they're going to get a reward for winning. And he sees David and how David's acting, and now he knows his men. And remember, Joab's the general. Now he knows his soldiers are ashamed of themselves. And Joab's upset about this. Says, "You guys were valiant men. Why are you ashamed of yourself? This is crazy." So Joab basically tells David he's being selfish. Like, David, you're being selfish right now. You care all about yourself. You don't care about these men who are just out fighting for you, right? David's bringing shame on the people who risk their lives to protect him and his family. He points that out. We'll see there. And that's the irony that David is mourning the enemy, right, instead of the protectors. So verse number 6 continues on. It says, "Because you love those who hate you and hate those who love you." Those are strong words. "For you have made it clear today that commanders and servants are nothing to you. For today I know that if Absalom were alive and all of us were dead today, then you would be pleased." Now we don't know if that's true, right? We don't know, and he probably would be happy if Absalom were alive, but he's making a really bold statement here to get David's attention. Like, hey, you want us to all go back? You want us to die and Absalom to win this whole war and take over? Would you be happy if Absalom were still king? Would that be what made you happy, David? You could see he's really fired up and probably really giving it to David, as David's still somber and in tears, right? He's letting him know this is not appreciated, David. We're not really appreciating how you're acting right now. So he's really kind of pointing out how irrational this is to David. He's kind of giving him a wake-up call, kind of like slapping him in the cheeks, like, "Wake up, David. Look what you're doing. Look how you're acting. You're acting spoiled. You're acting selfish. Look what all these men did for you." Verse 7, "Now therefore arise, go out and speak kindly to your servants. For I swear by the Lord, if you do not go, not a man will stay with you this night. And this will be worse for you than all the evil that has come upon you from your youth until now." Another strong statement. Think about what David's been through up until this point, right? He started out having to fight lions and bears and stuff off of sheep. That probably wasn't easy. That wasn't fun. Then he had to fight Goliath. That wasn't good. Then Saul wanted to kill him, right? Chased him around, right? And then his sons have died. Amnon's died. Absalom killed him. He's all upset about turmoil in his family. And Joab says, "You haven't seen nothing yet, David. You have not seen anything compared to what will come if you don't get this under control right now." And for all we know, and I'm guessing, he doesn't say this, I'm guessing Joab might have been the one to lead the revolt. If he didn't do this, Joab might have taken things into his hands being so mad. Although it doesn't say that. So he basically gives him an ultimatum. You either step up, be a leader, wipe your tears away, act like a man, or lose the fight yourself, David. And it's going to be worse than it ever has been before. Worse than all the evil David has experienced. And ironically, though, as Joab comes over a little hot under the collar here, like, well, I don't know if I'd approach it like this with the king. But it's exactly what David needed, I think. It's a firm pushback into leadership. He got kind of like slapped in the face a little bit, spiritually here. Like, get back up here. And it shows that sometimes a true friend needs to speak uncomfortable truths to wake us up spiritually, right? A good friend isn't just going to say, "Oh, well, maybe you should stop sinning, and maybe, did you think about this?" Sometimes you got to say, "Hey, listen, you're out of line. You know what the Bible says. I don't know why you're acting like this," especially when it's affecting other people, right? And this is affecting other people, too. It's like, you're hurting other people. You need to wake up, right? Sometimes we need that from ourselves, right? Sometimes even Jade, my wife, has to put me in my place. Like, "Eric, quit acting ridiculous," right? Like, "Oh, that's right. Thank you. I needed that." Because otherwise, sometimes you don't come to your own senses, right? So a good friend will sometimes speak uncomfortable truths. That's what we're seeing here from Joab. Looks a little fierce, but it's exactly what David needs. Because look what verse 8 says. "Then the king arose and took his seat in the gate. And the people were all told, 'Behold, the king is sitting in the gate.' And all the people came before the king." So David finally rises and takes his seat in the gate, which again is a public place of leadership and justice. So he's back there showing himself to be the king. What's really interesting is you don't hear David say, we don't have any verses that say David says, "You know what, Joab, you're right. I'm really sorry for all this. I need to get my act together." He might not have said anything at all. He might have just like looked at Joab, known he was right, not even said anything. He's just so torn, stood up, walked out, and just sat at the gate. Like, all right, I'll be the king. I know I need to be. I don't feel like being the king, but I'm going to be the king. I'm going to put on a face, and I'll do it. But he doesn't even say anything back to Joab. Maybe David's embarrassed. Maybe he knows Joab's right, or he would have sat there and kept crying, right? But he doesn't. He goes out there. And it also shows because it reassures the nation. The nation notices, hey, look, the king's sitting at the gate. Now the nation sees, okay, David's over his crying, and he's out here, he's going to be our leader again. So it shows that sometimes leadership is just about showing up. Sometimes it really is. Sometimes it doesn't take more than just showing up and being present. It can inspire and encourage people, right? Especially when they're hurting. So David didn't say anything. He didn't come out and give a great speech like, men of Israel and Judah, I'm back as your... You don't see anything. He just sits there, and his presence is enough to turn their frowns upside down. They don't feel as ashamed anymore because their leader is showing up. We'll finish verse 8 and then go into 9. There's a part of 8 I left out here. Now Israel had fled every man to his own home. And all the people were arguing throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, the king delivered us from the hand of our enemies and saved us from the hand of the Philistines. And now he has fled out of the land from Absalom. So it's interesting. Remember, the men of Israel, they're the ones that followed Absalom. That's why it says they had fled every man to his own home. They took off. Remember, when Absalom got killed, they took off, headed for the hills, because things have been reversed, right? David's men were taking control, and they were rebelling against David and his men. What's interesting, you see this argument break out between them. They're not so quick this time, though. They're not so quick to say, you know what? Yeah, let's make David king. Let's fix everything, and we're going to follow David. They have a bit of an argument. On one hand, they remember David's greatness, and like, well, remember he defeated the Philistines. He defeated Goliath. He's done a lot of great things. He's won a lot of wars for us. But on the other hand, he also ran when Absalom took over. He kind of abandoned us. It's probably how some people are saying it. Didn't David abandon us and just take off instead of fighting Absalom here? And he let Absalom be in charge? And they did also anoint Absalom, so they're struggling with this. What do? We also abandoned David. We also anointed Absalom. What do we do here, right? It seems that they only want David now as king now that Absalom's gone. They wouldn't have had these conversations, I don't think, if Absalom were still around. Which, by the way, is how Christians can be sometimes. Sometimes we only want King Jesus after our way fails. That can happen, right? People, you try your own way and then it fails and you're like, you know what? I need Jesus now. Now I need Jesus because my way didn't work out so well. And that's kind of how they're acting here. But it's a really big moment of national confusion. So even after the enemy is defeated, a nation can still struggle with unity and direction. You can still win a war and have your nation still not unified, right? And still arguing and bickering, which happens in our country too. Verse number 10. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, is dead in battle. And now therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing the king back? So they reflect again. They had anointed Absalom, who's now dead, but why aren't we bringing David back as king? So it shows, again, a change of heart, but also a hesitancy. And maybe they're also hesitant because of fear. Because David could come back and rightfully chop their heads off, probably. And it wouldn't be out of question, because they rebelled against him. He could come back if he wants to, and he's angry, and he could take him out. So they're not sure. So it also shows, how far they've drifted, right? How their relationships have really been strained and broken in the nation of Israel, that they're still unsure of how to handle this whole situation. But they do call for the king to come back. So verse 11 then kind of pivots here and says, and King David sent this message to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. Say to the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his house when the word of all Israel has come to the king? So David gets word that Israel says, you know what, we want you to be our king. Come on back, David. We've decided. We talked about it. You need to be our king. And David's like, I haven't heard anything from Judah yet. And that's my people. Judah's my tribe. Why aren't they talking about bringing me back as king? Why are they silent? I haven't got any messages from them yet, right? So he sends the priests to the elders of Judah, his own tribe, and reminds them, hey, you guys are behind the men of Israel. The 10 tribes up north, they've already talked about it. They want David to come back. Why aren't you guys saying anything? Why aren't you guys doing anything, right? And this is diplomacy. David didn't go to them. He sent Zadok and Abiathar. And I think David is, you kind of see, again, David's, in a way, now there's a lot of negative about him, but in the positives, you can see God, right? And you see Christ and his heart come out through him. So notice David's not just showing up and coming back to Jerusalem with his people, which he probably could have. He could have brought his servant and said, we're going back to Jerusalem. Nope. He's not coming back unless they invite him back, right? That's just like it is with us. Jesus doesn't force himself. Like, why isn't everybody in the world saved right now? Jesus died for all their sins. Why? Well, he's not forcing them to repent. He's not going to force them. You have to invite the Lord into your life. You have to invite the Holy Spirit into your life, right? You have to ask him to come in. It's the same here. David's showing that. I'm not just going to show up and force my way upon you. You need to want it, right? And it's also like, God goes and kind of prompts us, like, hey, guys, why aren't you repented? I died for your sins. Why don't you come to me? It says that God is after the lost, just like David is here. Like, hey, Judah, don't you want to ask me to come back? Don't you want me to be your king? So he's kind of prompting them. He's not going to force anything. It's diplomatic here. I got a good one here. All right, so verse number 12, he says, you are my brothers. You are my bone and my flesh. Why then should you be the last to bring back the king? So he appeals now to their family ties. You're my brothers. You're my bone and my flesh. You should have been the first ones to welcome me back, guys. And because they're the closest ones to him. And he's starting to bring up this language probably to remind them, their family, hey, I'm not going to hurt you. Why would Judah be hesitant when they're his own people? Well, they didn't go with him. They followed Absalom. If they would have been with him, they would have went and followed him into the wilderness. But they stayed and had Absalom anointed king. So Judah is probably a little bit ashamed. That's why it's, like if you did something wrong and your parents find out, you're not really eager to go talk to them about it, right? They kind of say, hey, is there anything you want to tell me, right? Same kind of thing here. And they're probably ashamed that David could turn on them and have them all slaughtered and taken care of, right? So he appeals, calling them this family. He's using those ties there to bring them back together. And the church is kind of like the church. The church, too, can fall into internal disputes after what I call a spiritual storm. And healing will take intentionality. If you're not intentional about healing after these wars, can even happen in a body of believers, it will remain a fracture. It does take some intention, some apologies, some, reconciliation here. So you're seeing that again. You're also seeing 1 Corinthians 1:10. I appeal to you, remember, it says that all of you agree and there are to be no divisions among you, right? So you can see David even acted, before this was ever written, before Paul ever wrote that, he's enacting the spiritual concept here. But restoration requires initiative on both parties, by the way. Remember, not just one party, both parties, because that's partial restoration if you don't. All right, let's go to verse 13 here. And say to Amasa, continues on, are you not my bone and my flesh? Now he's using family language with him. God, do so to me and more also, if you are not commander of my army from now on in place of Joab. So remember, Amasa is one of his relatives. It's David's sister's son. So it is a relative of his. So he's going to play to Amasa. But now David, again, is going to go into political genius mode. He's a political genius. Why do I say that? Well, remember who Amasa is. He was just leading Absalom's army. In that war in the forest of Ephraim, it was Absalom and Amasa versus David's men and Joab, right? Amasa is the counterpart of Joab, right? Which is why he says, I'm going to make you the commander of my army. Joab's getting fired, right? Which, here, that's powerful. David's finally sick of Joab. He fires him on the job. Why? Well, because he's been given orders and all along, and Joab's been really fierce. And one of the last things he ever told Joab before he left says, deal with my son gently. Be gentle with him. And what did Joab do? He disobeyed the orders, right? It'd be like the general of the army not listening to the president. The president says, hey, I want you to do this. And he says, I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to take care of this how I want to take care of it, right? You're liable to get fired on the job. Just because you're the general, just because you're the leader, doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want. If you got these commands and directives, you don't follow it, you get fired. So David fires Joab on the spot, which, of course, is going to make Joab mad. And now Amasa is going to be his leader. But why is this political genius? Because now it's going to win over all those men that fought under Amasa that are still around, those men of Israel that fled. They're like, well, that's our leader. That's our general. He'll be our general still. And it's kind of that bridge, right? He's going to go befriend his enemies. And if he wins over Amasa, he wins over the men of Absalom. He's going to bring more unity in the nation by appealing to Absalom's people, right? That's how you unify. He's not going to keep them distant. It's another form of restoration. David's a political genius, right? It's also an example of forgiveness, right? It's kind of like Jesus is, I know you did all these things against me, but I will work with you. I will work in your life. Right? So David is showing us that there. Verse 14, and he swayed the heart of all the men of Judah as one man, so that they sent word to the king, return, both you and all your servants. So David's approach wins their hearts. It says they acted as one man. Judah agrees, right? Oh, you know what? We should do this. Return, both you and all your servants. And they welcome him back, right? So this reconciliation, this strategy produced unity. It worked. He's a political genius, right? Verse 15, so the king came back to the Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to meet the king and to bring the king over the Jordan. Remember, the Jordan is always a place of transition. Now we're going to transition back into restoration and return. When he crossed the Jordan before, it was showing division, that he was fleeing. There's a new king in the nation of Israel. Now there's going to be a restoration and return, and they're even going to escort him across. It's kind of almost like a ceremony for the king, rolling out the red carpet and bringing the king back. Of course, David could have just crossed the Jordan with his servants, but there's a whole process to show we are with you in this. Come on back, king, right? So they're bringing him back. Verse 16 now continues on. And Shimei, the son of Gera, the Benjaminite from Baharim, hurried to come down with the men of Judah to meet King David. Huh. Anybody remember who Shimei is? Remember this guy? The guy that threw stones and was cursing David from the hills and throwing dust and rocks and saying, "Curse you, you man of blood." But now he's not so brave. Now and not only that, he's saying, hey, you know what? He's bound to David. Hey, I'm really sorry about that. Forgive me. I don't know what I was doing. I was a fool. Forgive me. Take me back, David. I didn't mean anything. I didn't mean anything about it. Now, the funny thing is, if David didn't ever come back, he'd probably still be cursing David. It's funny how the tides turn. All of a sudden, David has power, and all of a sudden, Shimei is a fan of David's. He knows why. He's rushing to make peace because it wouldn't have been good, right? So he's doing this to publicly reconcile. Like, I'm publicly coming out here and repenting, right? It looks like us though. It's sinners. Like, I'm going to say it in public. I was wrong. I'm not going to hide. Say, hey, David, can we have a word for a second? He drops right down in front of everybody. David, I am sorry. So he's publicly repenting here. And it says in verse 17, and with him were 1,000 men from Benjamin, and Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, with his 15 sons and his 20 servants, rushed down to the Jordan before the king. So you can see here that even Ziba is here now. Ziba, remember, he's the one that was put in charge of the land to take care of Mephibosheth. He lied about Mephibosheth and said, hey, Mephibosheth tried to betray you, which we don't see any evidence of that actually being the case. And remember David, he brought all that food to David, and David in his stress said, yep, cool, you can have all Mephibosheth's land, whatever. Well, now Ziba's here, front and center. Why? Political. These guys are all political. A lot of these people are not loyal. They're just trying to do things for their own gain. Ziba wants to make sure he's in good graces with David still. Not only that, he probably wants to get to him before Mephibosheth can correct the story. Like, hey, remember, I protect you because Mephibosheth is going to turn on you. Remember that, David. And I'm still here. I'm still one of your guys out here. So he kind of runs to the front here to make sure David knows that he's still loyal. I'm still loyal to you, David, right? And he brings all of his servants there who are supposed to be working the land with him to show that he has a strong allegiance. Verse 18, and they crossed the ford to bring over the king's household and do his pleasure. And Shimei the son of Gera fell down before the king as he was about to cross the Jordan. So there he is, again, falling down, showing that humility, that he was wrong. In 19 and 20 it says, and he said to the king, let not my lord hold me guilty, or remember how your servant did wrong on that day my lord the king left Jerusalem. Do not let the king take it to heart. For your servant knows that I have sinned. Therefore, behold, I have come this day, the first of all the house of Joseph, to come down to meet my lord the king. Again, saying, I have sinned. Don't hold a grudge, David. I'm the first one to come to reconcile. I want to let you know I'm really sorry about all this stuff. And it continues on here. Verse 21. Abishai, he comes up again. That's Joab's brother. The son of Zeruiah answered, shall not Shimei be put to death for this? Because he cursed the Lord's anointed? Abishai, she's thinking, remember, he was the one last time when Shimei is throwing rocks at him. Remember, Abishai goes, let me go cut his head off, David. I'm going to go cut his head off right now. He can't say that. And David's like, oh, no. Chill, let him go. If God wants him to do that, let him do it. So Abishai's like, oh, this is the moment. I get to go kill him finally. David, let me kill him. He's admitting to the sin. He's reminding us of what he did. Let me kill him this time. He deserves it. And you're the king now. You have the power to do this, right? So, again, it shows the danger. Abishai has zeal for the Lord and zeal for justice, but never any mercy, right? And we're supposed to have a balance between justice and mercy. That's the struggle as a Christian. You bring justice, but you also have to give mercy. He doesn't want to give any mercy. He's the kind of people that says, they all should go to hell. They're sinners, go to hell. Not like, well, can we at least share the message and see if they repent first, right? Like, he's those kind of fire and brimstone. Send them where they need to go. And look how David responds. But David said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should do this day? You should this day be as an adversary to me? Shall anyone be put to death in Israel this day? For do I not know that I am this day king over Israel? Like, don't remind me what I can do, Abishai. I know what I can do. I'm sick of your guys as aggressive, hateful, always wanting to kill, always wanting to fight. I'm sick of it, guys. I'm in king, and nobody's dying today on my watch, right? David's basically saying, this is a day of restoration, not retaliation. We're not retaliating on all of our enemies today. I'm here to restore the land, Abishai. This is why I'm in charge and not you. Basically, what's saying. And David is choosing the higher road. Abishai's not wrong. He does have the right to chop everybody's heads off, kill all of his enemies because they betrayed him. But David, again, showing the heart of Christ, chooses peace over vengeance, right? He's choosing peace over vengeance and allowing them to repent, just like the Lord does with us. And the king said to Shimei, you shall not die. And the king gave him His oath. So he makes it official with an oath. He's definitely not going to kill him. So Shimei can relax, right? Like the Lord says, you're not going to be banished to hell. I'm going to give you eternal life because you repented, right? You can be certain of that. Same thing here. And remember, James 2:13 says, mercy triumphs over judgment. You can see that right here. True strength isn't found in how harshly we punish people, but how graciously we restore people when they truly repent, right? Verse 24, and Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king. He had neither taken care of his feet, nor trimmed his beard, nor washed his clothes from the day the king departed until the day he came back in safety. So this shows that he was deeply mourning. This goes against what Ziba said. If Mephibosheth were really trying to take over, he would have been trimmed up beard, he would have been looking nice, but he's disheveled because it shows that he's just a wreck, because he doesn't know where David's at. David's not back, and he was full of sorrow there and loyalty to David. Verse 25 says, and when he came to Jerusalem to meet the king said to him, why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? Remember, David was told that Mephibosheth had turned on him, and David is curious. Why didn't you ever come, Mephibosheth? I'm wondering, why didn't you come over? I would have welcomed you. Why didn't you ever show up? David wants clarity, right? He's finally going to hear the other side of the story. Probably should have thought of that before he gave, Ziba all the land, but he didn't, because he was in dire straits at the time. But verse 26, here's Mephibosheth's answer. He answered, my lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said to him, I will saddle a donkey for myself, that I may ride on it and go with the king, for your servant is lame. So he explains, like, David, I'm disabled. I wasn't able to. He said he was going to go get this thing for me. He never came back, never gave me a sheet, and he just kind of took off without me. I had nowhere to go. I can't walk around here. That's why he's my servant. That's why he helps me. He abandoned me, and not only that, he slandered me. Right? So he says, like, I was taking advantage of David. I didn't ever intend to stay back. Verse 27. He has slandered your servant, my lord the king. My lord the king is like the angel of God. Do therefore what seems good to you. So he's saying, that you're the angel of God. This is honor and surrender. He's saying, David, I know I trust in you. You're a wise man. I love you. I'm loyal to you. And I just trust that you'll do the right thing. I have trust in how you'll handle all the story. Remember, this is a reminder to not judge only by one side of the story. Proverbs 18:17 says that the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. And you're seeing that here. Ziba's story was not completely true, what David heard in the wilderness. There was more to the story. And David acted quickly. Verse 28. For all my father's house were but men doomed to death before my lord the king. But you set your servant among those who eat at your table. What further right have I then to cry to the king? I love what Mephibosheth says here. Honestly, David, you could have killed me a long time ago. My dad's Jonathan, who is Saul's son, and you actually could have killed me and all my family. But you didn't. I owe you gratitude still. So he didn't look entitled. He didn't say, yeah, David, where's my land? Ziba took all my land. You got to give me all my land back. He's saying, hey, I'm just grateful to be alive. You let me eat at your table, David. I'm just honestly thankful. I'm so undeserving of this honor, but I'm really grateful for it, right? And it shows he's more worried about his relationship than his material rewards, right? Which is important. Verse 29, and the king said to him, why speak any more of your affairs? I have decided you and Ziba shall divide the land. Like, wait, what, David? This one is baffling. David, what do you mean divide the land? It was Mephibosheth's land, and you gave it all of it to Ziba, and now you're going to split it down the middle. What kind of shows human limitation and judgment. Have you ever had, I worked in the school system, and, I wasn't there for something that happened, and two kids come up to me. He punched me, he did this. Well, you didn't see. He threw this at me first. And I wasn't there. I don't know. Who do I know who's right? So David's probably like, listen, I wasn't there for this. I don't know who's right. We're splitting it down the middle. You'll both get the land. That's how we're going to deal with it, because I don't want to get any more of this. I'm so sick of this argument, right? You've heard that before. Your kids are arguing. He did this. No, he did this. Like, I'm sick of hearing about it. Here's my order. Don't shut up. I don't want to hear any more about it, right? He is sick of this whole, he said, she said, I had the land. He was going to betray you. So David just, at this point, he is so exhausted. Don't forget, he's mourning his son. This is the last thing he wants to do, is settle this dispute of land right now. And he's just trying to come back and restore the nation, right? But it can be hard to decipher truth and justice when you weren't there for the whole thing. So you also see that David doesn't want to make a hasty decision either way. And Mephibosheth said to the king, oh, let him take it all, since my lord the king has come safely home. So he shows David is his reward. This shows how Mephibosheth wasn't a material guy. He's like, I don't need any land, David. Again, like I just said, I could have been killed. You're generous enough to not have killed me. So, again, he doesn't worry about material blessing. It shows that he has a good, true heart. And Mephibosheth's probably the one telling the truth. But he doesn't care about the land at all. Verse 31. Now Barzillai the Gileadite had come down from Rogelim, and he went on with the king of the Jordan to escort him over the Jordan. Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old. He had provided the king with food while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very wealthy man. So Barzillai was the one that the last chapter helped bring all that food with the other three men. Remember? Those three guys that brought up, he was one of them. He's a wealthy man. He was an old guy. He couldn't fight, but he used his wealth. He's the Christians that are wealthy, that God provided wealth, that are silent, generous supporters of God's work, and it's exactly what godly leaders need sometimes, right? He needed those provisions, so Barzillai helps not in war, but he uses what God gave him, his resources, to help the men of God. And it says, and the king said to Barzillai, come over with me, and I will provide for you with me in Jerusalem. So David knows, it shows that David wants to reward his loyal friends. He knows Barzillai was loyal. He says, you know what, come with me. You're going to live in Jerusalem with me too. You've been really great to me, Barzillai. Even at your old age, you didn't have to share all your wealth, but you did. That was really honorable. Come live with me. But look what Barzillai says in the next two verses. But Barzillai said to the king, how many years have I still to live that I should go up with the king of Jerusalem? I am this day 80 years old. Can I discern what is pleasant, what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats or what he drinks? Can he still listen to singing men? Basically saying, hey, I'm old. I can't even really enjoy life much anymore. My senses are starting to go. I don't know how many more years I have life. It would kind of be wasted to honor me, right? He's saying, thanks, but no thanks. I appreciate it, David, but really, really unnecessary. And he has a better request. Look what he says. Verse 36, your servant will go a little way over the Jordan with the king. Why should the king repay me with such rewards? Like, hey, I'm still going to escort you over here, but I don't need to go all the way back to Jerusalem. I'm just doing this to show you that I still am your friend. I'm loyal to you, and I appreciate that you're back. Verse 37, please let your servant return, that I may die in my own city near the grave of my father and my mother. But here's your servant Kimham. Let him go over with my lord the king, and do for him whatever seems good to you. So Barzillai doesn't bow out and say, thanks, but no thanks. He says, hey, I can't, but you know who can? My son, Kimham. We believe it's his son. Like, my son will go with you. So he's preparing the next generation to carry on the faithfulness to David. Like, hey, I can't. I'm going to die soon. My son, he'll be faithful to you. You take him back to Jerusalem, he'll be like me being there. My son will show loyalty to you. And the king answered, Kimham shall go over with me, and I will do for him whatever seems good to you. And all that you desire of me, I will do. So the favor is passed through the relationship, right? David says, you know what? I'll take your son, Kimham. Come on, bring him over. And it shows that, loyalty to God's people can result in generational blessing. Generations, if you do that, your fruit can survive long after you're gone, right? Barzillai and his loyalty is going to survive long after he's gone through his son, Kimham. Verse 39, then all the people went over the Jordan, and the king went over, and the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own home. So he lets Barzillai go, and they cross over the Jordan. Then verse 40, the king went on to Gilgal, and Kimham went on with him, all the people of Judah, and also half the people of Israel brought the king on his way. So they have this kind of little ceremony, and the men of Judah bring him over in this kind of kingly ceremony across the Jordan. But look what happens, because of the last three verses. Verse 41, then all the men of Israel came to the king and said to the king, why have our brothers, the men of Judah, stolen you away and brought the king and his household over the Jordan and all David's men with him? The northern tribes feel left out. Hey, there's a kingly ceremony, bring on the Jordan. You didn't even ask us. We're the ones that brought it up. Why is Judah? Why did they get to bring the king over? It kind of reminds me of like how kids argue. Why can I be the one to do this? Why do they get to do that? Is it really important? The king's back. The king's back. Is it really important who brings across the river? But it is an honorable ceremony, and they kind of feel gypped. They're offended. Verse 42. I love Judah's ready to respond. All the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, well, because the king's our close relative. Why then are you angry with this matter? Basically saying, like, have we eaten at all the king's expense? Or has he given us a gift? He has any gifts? He's like, we're family. We didn't get any reward for this. It's not like he gave us a bunch of gifts and a bunch of food. We didn't get anything special. We're just here walking him across the river. What's your problem? We're his family. We have the right. You guys have less of a right than we because we're family. He already told us we're flesh and blood. That's why we're here. We didn't get any perks from this. We're just doing it out of honor. And verse 43 how it ends. And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah, well, we have 10 shares in the king. And David also, we have more than you. Why then did you despise us? Were we not the first to speak of bringing back our king? But the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. So you see the spat going back. They respond, well, you think you're family? We're 10 tribes of Israel. We have more tribes than you guys do. We're family too. And they're like bickering back and forth. And they're trying to say, well, we're like superior if you count numbers. We have more family members than you guys do. And that you can see pride and rivalry beginning to fester again. David's here trying to bring restoration, bring the nation together, and this chapter is going to end with a dispute. Because it says that Judah's words were fiercer. It doesn't say, but it sounds like the argument continued on, and they kept getting angry. And you know how it is with arguments. If there's not a peaceful word, it only gets more intense. it only increases the level of hostility. And offense, when you get offended, that only breeds division. That never brings people together. So Israel's offended. Now they're mad at the tribes of Judah. Judah's offended that Israel's even mad about this. I think it's stupid you're even arguing. We're just crossing over the Jordan River, right? And you can also see the danger of first rights thinking. Like, we have right to do this. It's a dangerous way to think, right? Everybody should be equal. We shouldn't be arguing over who has more of what and this. It's stupid, it's prideful, and it's shameful, right? And we also learn here that how fierce words can fracture fellowship. The whole point of all this whole ceremony was to bring the place together. And you see that happen sometimes, just to bring the people together. Think about holidays for some families. Luckily, most of our families are blessed that we're Christian. Some families, you bring the holiday to enjoy things, and they get in fights right out the gate. And you have to right out the gate, hey, you're not going to bring up this political issue. You're not going to do this because we just want to get through the dinner in peace. Right? That happens because fierce words can fracture fellowship. If you want to have a good time, you got to get along. You can't just argue and bicker about who has what and who's right and who's wrong. And it causes all these issues. And if you know anything about what's to come in the next chapter and the chapters to come in the book of Kings, you're going to see that this is only the beginning. This is never really restored. This argument between Israel and Judah is going to fester. You don't see it healed here. And that's kind of what takes place. And that's how that chapter ends. Does anybody have any questions or comments before we close about chapter 19 or anything that came to mind? Yeah, Dave.
I think David had every right to warn Absalom. That was just
sure.
He had that right, but I think throughout his entire leadership, he's messed up a lot.
Yes.
In this case, he should have went out after the battle, said, listen, I'm going back to Israel.
Yep.
Handled Joab privately.
Yep.
Dismiss him, get rid of whatever, and then send some type of delegation or invite Judah back together with peace along the way instead of in the midst of hard feelings.
Right.
He messed up when he mourned in public because people didn't take that well.
Right.
But he had the right to do that. But he could have handled it differently.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Everything David here, he has the right to do. Even to put Amasa over his army and fire Joab. I think he had the right to do it. It's about how he goes about it. And shows that even good leaders with good decision can go about things the wrong way, right? David should have cried about it and said, all right, now I got to go out there and be their leader. And like you said, he should have done it quietly. Joab, come here, I got to talk to you behind closed doors. But he doesn't. Joab doesn't. We don't see Joab get word of this. He's just going to go back to him. Hey, Joab, you just got fired in front of everybody, in front of Judah. Amasa's in charge. Yeah, that went really well, right? You see how Joab would have felt. So David, again, not a perfect leader, which is why we need Jesus, because there is no perfect king. Even the man after God's own heart is failing over and over again about how he handles it. I do agree. He had the right. That's your own son. You have the right to mourn him. You have the right to fire Joab, but there's ways to do things, right, and how to handle them. And he did fail as a leader in many different ways. Paul, you had something.
Yeah, no, that last thing that you were talking about, the men of Israel, the men of Judah, reminded me of the parable that Jesus spoke of, the workers that were hired at different hours.
Yes! That's great. That's a really great insight there. So he's reminded, remember that one parable about the men that get hired, and then a couple hours later he hires another one, and then right before the end they get hired, and they all get paid the same? Like, wait, what the heck? We were here working all day. And I mean, let's be honest, we'd be upset. Could you imagine going to work and you're there all 8 hours, and the one guy overslept or was out fishing, and then came back, oh, last hour I'll work. Like, great, you guys all get paid evenly. We'd probably act the same way, right? But it shows God, and remember Jesus says, in that parable, like, I said how much you're going to earn. Do you think you're going to you think you need overtime pay now because you worked longer than them? I told you agreed to this contract, right? But it shows how these arguments, and when you worry about other people and how they're getting rewarded and paid and done what's getting done for them, it causes division. Worry about your own self. Be thankful that the king's back. They should be thankful the king's back, that it's going to be peaceful. Nobody's getting their heads chopped off, because honestly, Israel and Judah, all those men could have had their heads chopped off, right? They should be thankful that David is bringing peace back. But what did it do? It explodes in an argument. We should get there. We should have been there first. And it is so true, Paul. That parable that Jesus said, you can see even back here, and it happens today, right? It still happens. Where just be thankful for what you have. Be thankful for what God's done for you. Don't worry about other people. They sinned their whole lives. I've been a Christian ever since I was a little kid. They were doing drugs and alcohol and all this stuff, and they're doing this now, and they did all these evil things, and they're going to be saved? Like, worry about yourself. You should be glad you're saved. We should all go to hell, right? And you can hear Christians talk like this today. So this is a reminder in this scripture here that worry about yourself, be thankful for what God's done for you. Don't start saying you deserve more than other people. That's just all about your own pride and selfishness, right? And that's what we're seeing here. So, well, thanks again, everybody. Make sure to read ahead. We'll be next week, Lord willing, in chapter 20 and continue on. But till then, keep your lamps trimmed and burning.